yeah, there's always a possibility that somebody on the YouTube stream might want to type in a chat. So we'll sort of do dual duty. The way I'm thinking is for
Sure.
this next 5 minutes, we'll sort
Yep.
of combine the public comment if anybody wants to, along
Yeah.
with
So
our
at
introductions.
this point, there it doesn't appear to be anybody, but give me a heads up if somebody sees one. Why don't we go in order? I think Len is the senior member, joined just before Stefan and I. So Len, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. And thanks for joining us, Mr. McGee. Yeah, my name is Leonard Diggins, and yeah, as Wig indicated, I mean, I've been on the rock since the beginning, and that was back in 2004, and I am now representing the Rider Oversight Committee in on the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, and since I'm the chair of that body, I now sit on the board of the Boston Region MPO, and I will say that being on this, we create an avenue, or recognition by folks in Arlington, such that they asked me in 2019 to run for select board, and I got elected and then reelected. So I'm on the Arlington Select Board too. Normally, I don't mention that. I like to keep that in my back pocket, but given your stature, I figured I would tell you. And actually, I've testified in front of you, as a member of the, well, you, of course, as a member of the, or as a co-chair of the Joint Transportation Committee, and I forget exactly what it was. It was probably at this point over 10 years ago. But thanks again for joining us.
Glad to be here, and glad to see you doing your part on the local level, municipal level. It's important.
Yeah. Work with some Representative Garberly, who is my representative in the House. He may join us tonight, so.
Thank you, Len. And why don't we go next to Craig, who represents one of the historic transit lines, among other things.
Thanks. I'm not sure how I follow Len in his 14 titles there. But Craig Laskowski, public member. I live in Milton. So as this committee well knows, I love the Mattapan High Speed Line, our beloved trolley here. But thank you so much for joining us. I apologize. I do need to go to audio only here in about 20 minutes or so, but I wanted to be here in person to introduce myself and say how much I appreciate your time.
Great.
Thank you, Craig. And I'll go next, and then we can kind of turn the steering back to Stefan. But Stefan and I came on board a little bit after Len, maybe a year or two, and have been members ever since. I'm from Somerville. I worked a lot on the Green Line project advocacy. Also sat on the steering committee for the regional plan at MAPC for 7 years, and have done a fair amount of environmental health, epidemiology research with the universities here. And I have a particular interest, which we may have some time a bit later, in the lower Mystic to Lynn communities are the most EJ intense and immigrant intense communities that don't have the service levels of the rest of the system. So I'm particularly concerned about that. But even more so given the recent purchase of the power plant by Encore, between their new entertainment expansion and potential soccer stadium, which would hold a little bit more fans than Fenway Park, I don't think bus rapid transit is at all capable of serving that future demand. And I do think it's worth looking into turning the blue line into a urban ring, using the Grand Junction, which has capacity now that we've gone ahead with building a South Side engine terminal. So those are longer term things, but they also have a lot of lead time. And I'll stop there and flip it back to Stefan.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Yes, Mr. McGee, I'll echo what everyone said. Thank you so much for joining us. I apologize that we didn't reach out to you sooner, but it's great to have you on board. You know me from Lynn, 21-year resident of Lynn, and I've been on the Rider Oversight Committee since just after we moved to Lynn around 2005. And by the way, for context, this organization is going to be having our 20th anniversary next calendar year sometime. So we've been around quite a while and seen a lot of changes. I'm going to stop talking, which is hard for me to do, I admit, and ask Mr. McGee, just sort of off the cuff, what are some of the things that you feel that you're going to focus on the agency addressing in either the short term, long term, whatever you'd like to share with us, and some of your concerns that you have, either personally or shared with the board, and anything else that you'd like to share with us. So I'm very interested to hear your perspective.
Thanks, Stefan, and thanks for all of you for asking me to join in tonight, talk a little bit about maybe the vision for the future, but somewhere where we've been and where I think we can go. Interesting to look at the Grand Junction options. Today's story about I know it's been percolating, but the soccer field or the new soccer stadium over in Everett. I know there was some other issues related to the port piece of it that I think are legitimate to have those discussions. But again, I think it gets back to the opportunity that sits there, particularly with regional rail options, electrification, and creating stations in places like Everett, right around the casino, that would start to have the kind of access points, particularly with the investment happening down there. And just as importantly, for the access through, as you said, the economic justice corridor, and being part of the first phase of the regional rail that the former board, or the Fiscal Management Control Board, embraced, and I think saw the vision for a 21st century future for what I like to call regional rail. I really like to stay away from commuter rail or commuter ferries. I like to talk about it because it's not just commuting. It's a transportation option that really reflects the potential and the opportunities there. So I'm a little bit of background. I've been in Lynn all my life. Prior to being in the legislature, I was elected in 1994, and I worked in Boston the 70s and 80s in different jobs. Worked for a law firm on Tremont Street, and so I've been a T rider. Not commuter rail, because it really is not as convenient or cost effective coming from Lynn. But I've been a rider for several decades. Used to take the blue line in, get right on it. I'm actually doing that again now. A blue line to the green line, get off for my law office, which was right across the street from the Common. Now I'm doing it to get to the transportation building, and it was always a valuable asset for me because I was always in and out of my office. I always needed access back to my car out at Wonderland, and was able to, because of the service at the time in the early 90s, was great resource and great asset. And it continues to be that coming back as the slow zones have been addressed on the blue line. And I think the GM in a really good way articulated that at the last meeting in the press conference. In a personal way, I had a 9:30 meeting last week, was running late, took me, and Stefan, you know this, took me close to over 25 minutes to half an hour to get from my house on Ocean Street to Wonderland. I walked onto the platform, the blue line was there. I got to the government center, the green line train was right there. It took me a little less time, or the same amount of time, to get on the blue line to the green line to Boylston as it did in my car getting over to Wonderland. So what the system means is something that I'm very aware of, and of something that I've been a strong supporter of my whole career. And then in the legislature, when I got elected in '94, the priority was bring the blue line to Lynn. And that was one of the talking points when I got elected state rep in 1994, was what I worked on when I was in the House. And it's changed a bit with the regional rail opportunities that are probably more realistic financially, and really have been embraced in a broader way. But the kind of rapid transit access that Lynn has really not had for I've seen plans since from 1946 to bring the Blue Line to Lynn. So we've been talking about this for before I was born, and the understanding of what the type of service that riders expect and need is what I been one of my priorities through my whole professional career as an elected official, and I'm excited to be involved now on the board as we start to move in a better direction. And you all understand it's been this administration, and I think the new GM has walked into a huge financial and a huge problem agency that's been impacted by underinvestment for years, a lack of focus on the real needs of the agency and what it means to the economy of our region. So it's been substantial challenges, and we hear about it every day. The GLX, the slow zones, on and on. We could go on, and every day there's a different story. And so it's clear that we have substantial challenges. But I also like to look at these substantial challenges as, in many ways, an inflection point and a great opportunity to really work together to try and create the 21st century system that will really build on the kind of economic engine that the T has been in the past, and still is today, even though it's under a lot of stress, but moving in the right direction with the new leadership and the support of the administration. And so it's these kind of investments that need to happen lend itself to a really bright future if we're able to come together. And I say this a lot, and I mean it. It's for us to move transportation at large, because I'm also on the MassDOT board, and it can't be, here in Eastern Mass, we focus on the MBTA, but regional transit, South Coast Rail, East-West Rail, the kind of opportunities to create a transit connection for people in the Commonwealth is what will set us apart nationally if we can really come together to make it happen. And it's not going to be easy, but that's going to involve, the riders, the advocates, the elected officials, business community, higher ed, healthcare, you name it. People, we need to come together and have that common vision of creating the kind of transit system in the Commonwealth that will really put us at another level when we're talking about the kind of opportunity that will bring. We're a small enough state that we can really make it happen. So it's for me, the challenge is finding out what is the real cost, both to bring the system where it needs to be, and more importantly, to not lose sight of, and the same as we talked about it, and again, talking about the opportunity over in Everett, economic justice corridor, the kind of access that we're going to need as these kind of major private investments come into play, is understanding that the dollars we invest are a return, and we get bogged down on the cost, and I know that's a big challenge, but I think we need to change the discussion a bit and talk about what is the return on the investment we need to make the system work. And I always go back to the Central Artery project. I was in the legislature when that was being worked on, completed. There was a lot of criticism about that, it was an amazing project when you think about the engineering that came into play to keep the expressway running above while we were building a whole new network for roads in Boston. And there's a lot of criticism, 15 billion, the overruns. But and I said this today, I spoke to the Lynn Area Chamber of Commerce this morning. Get off at Boston Garden and walk over through the North End over to the Seaport District in Southie and tell me what you see. You see tens of billions of dollars of private investment that came from that public investment. The whole improved, in the 90s, we put money in to improve around Boston Garden. When they built the new garden, there was nothing over there. It's become a new substantial community with major private investment. The Seaport District, you can't calculate the kind of investment that continue. Every time I walk over there, there's something new happening. So I think we need to change the discussion about what does it cost and how can we make it work with what's the return on our investment, and the inability or the lack of action is not an option. The inability to do what we need to do is not an option. So it's working together for all of us who believe in that. And I like to talk about it. There's people that will never take transit. They won't ride on trains. Maybe they live on the 495 belt, 128 belt. They live in Lynn. They will be driving their cars wherever they go. If they want to see a better way of traveling in the Commonwealth, then their support of investment in the kind of transit we need makes their commute or their quality of life better, because it's putting people in a place and making the roads not the second worst congested traffic in the country next to Chicago. So, and then it all comes back. It comes back to the kind of ride that the riders can feel safe, afford, and can easily access it to get to where they need to be in a timely fashion. So we're talking frequency, safety, affordability, and access for everyone. And if we're able to continue to focus on those goals, take the real positives about what the system continues to bring us, even in a challenged time, and understand that we need to come together and create a better future. And transportation keys all of it: housing, creating opportunity for jobs, workforce development, private investment. It all comes together if we're able to finally make the kind of decisions and put the kind of dollars into this kind of transportation system that will pay huge dividends moving forward if we can get there and make it happen. So that's kind of my priority: talking about the need, identifying the challenges, and just as importantly, talking about the opportunity for everyone that lives in this Commonwealth. The opportunity is real if we're able to come together and work together to make it happen. So happy to think, comments, questions, thoughts, but that's kind of gives you a little perspective of what I think, and I'm excited to be able to be a voice for it, bring the experience I've had. I was on this Transportation Committee in the Senate from 2003 to 2018. I chaired the committee from 2011 to 2018. So, and prior to even being on the committee, was always my goal to be on the Transportation Committee. When I got elected to the House, that was my request. It never made it on the House side, but because living in Lynn, and Stefan, you know this, Lynn is, if you don't come to Lynn much, Lynn is, there's no way we're going to be able to drive our way or build our way on the roads out of the inaccessibility we have in the city of Lynn. It's really the kind of, that's why we've always focused on the options for transit being in our community, because we understand, and that transcends Lynn. It really is, you can talk to any community that understands this, that the need is real and the opportunity is real.
I'll let the other gentlemen ask questions first. Len, Wig, Craig, feel free.
Sure. I can jump in here. So we've been around a while, and we've seen a number of government, a number of governors, and certainly a number of MBTA general managers, and we're always optimistic. And I should have added that I use public transportation for everything. And so I'm completely transit dependent, and happily so. I don't want to own a car. I happily take less income in order not to have a car and not to have to drive. But I have followed almost everything I could read about the MBTA, especially after the Fiscal Management Control Board took over. And a lot more information was made available. And I've had the utmost confidence that every administration has done the best they could, but still somehow problems are missed. And I keep saying to myself, it's like, what did I miss in everything that I was reading from the FMCB that didn't allow me to see the problems that we're having now? And I know part of it is just that, I mean, there's only so much, I mean, so much we can do to dig in to situations that aren't brought to us, and so it'd be nice, I think, if there could be more investigation done. And so I wonder to what extent the board of directors are able to do that, willing to do that, and and when I say able to do that, I mean, do you have the capacity to do that? And I know this is a long-winded question. I'm sorry about that. I tend to try to be short. But one of the things is when they were initially working on creating the board of directors, I was like, the number's a little small. I think you're going to need to have like maybe 5 or 7 members, but then a big staff supporting them so they can actually be proactive and go looking at various elements of the team, kind of like looking under the hood a lot in order to see what's going on and understand it. So once again, what is it that the board you think can do to be more proactive and find things before they actually become big problems? Thank you.
It's a good question. There's a lot there. So, and from my experience, so I think I was appointed in April or May. A lot of briefings, a lot of ability to really ask some questions related to where we're at and where we're going. And my perspective, and I say it all the time, is that the agency needs to be completely transparent. And I think in the past there has been an inability to like lay out clearly where the system is. And so I think, I definitely feel a change. I think the new GM, I think last week's presentation and the planning that went into putting together that, and then being proactive about letting people know much ahead of time where the downtime is going to be, where the closings are, so people can be prepared for it. But it's this isn't to point fingers at anyone in particular, but it's all of us have kind of really not taken the opportunity to understand what it really means to run this type of system, and whether it be dollars, being down almost 2,000 employees, we're getting back. We're been really proactive in bringing a new workforce on, but it's tough to run an agency with, 1,000, 1,500, 1,600, 1,800 vacancies in the operation. It's hard to run a system when you're limited on the maintenance and an inability to do the kind of work that needs to be done. And it's all kind of coming to the forefront right now. I think when I was in the legislature and we were working on the Fiscal Management Control Board, I was skeptical of whether the board was the right direction to go. I think, but I have to say that the Fiscal Management Control Board really did a great job in putting a lot of those issues right out in front of the public, and that's what I see the opportunity here for us to on the current board. There's a great group of people that are on the board that have a lot of experience. Tom Glenn, as the chair, ran the T in the late 80s, early 90s. We have a really great group of people that are really looking for the information so we can be part of the solution. And that's going to be taking a lot of time and effort, but everybody is really focused and working in the right direction. And I said this to the general manager. I probably said it at one of the meetings, because when we were talking about creating the Fiscal Management Control Board, some of my colleagues in the Senate, we were talking about what's a good way to move forward. And I think the GM is identified in a good way. He's brought on a number of new leaders to the agency to specifically address specific issues, stations, capital, bringing in the kind of talent in a role where you have numerous leaders of different parts of the agency that allows them to focus more clearly on those specific issues. What's happening in the stations, what's going on day to day. If there's an issue in the stations, you've got the team in place with the leadership to take that on. And so I do think that as the agency continues to develop an expanded team. And I have to say the team that was in place with limited resources and limited staff worked hard to move some of these issues forward. Now building the bandwidth back into the agency to allow all of those people that are working there to have the support they need to make get the work done and make the decisions to move the agency forward is really, I think that's happening, and you're starting to see some results with that. And the legislature gave, and particularly with the tracks and the slow zones, the legislature has come up with additional money. The administration's come up with additional money to come in both to hire new staff and bring on the staff necessary to fill those roles that were left empty, and just as importantly to put the dollars in as we're working to address those slow zones. That money is available to take that on. So it is a part of the, I think, effort to move forward and build the trust back with the riders to let them know that putting the pieces in place to be successful.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add. We did see especially 5 to 15 years ago. 5 to 12 years ago. Especially when I remember, I think it was in the first term of the Patrick administration, there was an attempt to raise fares, and it failed, and then the big mantra then was that we're gonna fix it first. We're gonna be lean and mean. It was all about keeping the FTE, the head count down, because fully funded the FTE was just very high, and we either cut, or we didn't increase by attrition, and it was almost predictable that we would end up in this situation. But I don't think anyone saw the pandemic coming, of course, and then it being just about impossible to hire people at the rate that you needed. But then we were desperate because we were down, and I think one of the issues is that the T has a certain amount of independence, but a large part of what happens at the T in terms of funding, happens in the corner office, at Beacon Hill, and if the governor is supportive, it's really hard to get the funding that we need, I feel, even though we have a very strong House and Senate here. So that's my concern going forward. I'm glad we're in a good situation now, but let's hope that we can keep that momentum. Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
No, it's a great point, and it's I was chair at the time. I was on the committee and then chair at the time that Governor Patrick was working towards a larger transportation investment that reflected off the 2007 Transportation Finance Commission report that talked about a $20 billion global transportation problem. And it is a challenge to get the kind of resources into the agency that need to be there. And sometimes it's counterintuitive. You think cutting back on the FTEs is the right way to go, but the reality is it's not the solution, and it brings its own set of challenges, which I think we're facing right now. Been very successful on bringing the staffing back up. We're not where we need to be, but there's been a really robust effort at human resources at the agency to really start to build that workforce back up. And the results are starting to be reflected in the hirings that are starting to happen. So it's and like I said earlier, I think what from my perspective is, let's lay out what do we need? What's the real what do we need? What do we need for employees? What do we need for dollars to make the system the way we want it to be? And then have an honest discussion about how do we get there. And I always say this. And that's why I said we're in an inflection point. We do have two choices. We can finally take it on. And for years, the polling, if you polled people in the Commonwealth, they want their roads to be better. They want access to a better transit system, regional transit, whatever it is. But when it comes down to finding the increased resources it takes to get there, the polling falls off. There's no real consensus about how do we get there? How do we get more dollars into the transportation system? And so I think, like I said earlier, it's having a broader discussion about what investments do we need to make to see the return on our dollar and what's the return? The return is a better system that people can use and find housing, find jobs, make their lives better. It really keys off of this. So it is having a broader discussion and maybe a different kind of discussion about how we get there. And I do think it's a part of the puzzle, and being open and honest about what the needs are going to be beyond what we're able to do right now. And like I said, I think we're making progress. A lot of good things are happening, but we need to continue to focus on what steps we need to take to make it the kind of system that we all want and deserve.
I can say one more thing, but I'm not, unless there's time at the end, because I've said a lot already, so I'm going to stop. Yeah.
Wig or Craig, something next?
Well, I can make a couple remarks, and then we can go to Craig and you, Stefan. First, with regard to GLX, I have told the committee, but would like to tell everybody here that I'm a couple blocks from the Gilman station on the longer branch, and it has been working quite well, in my estimation, for virtually the whole time it's been open. Secondly, I want to backtrack a little bit and say that we were never in favor of the opulent cost runaway at the first attempt, where they had palaces for stations. And I do want people to remember that the GLX project came in very close to on budget and on time. It was quite well managed in that regard. So that, I think, if people have been reading the Globe, they would think that the Green Line is as slow as the slow zones on the older part of the system downtown, and nothing could be further from the truth. In the last several years, I have been much more delayed on the old parts of the system than at any time on the Long Branch of the new GLX project. So I do want people to know that. Secondly, to just backtrack a little bit on the potential for using the Grand Junction, it already crosses the Charles from Boston, and it comes up through Kendall, and then it kind of wraps around the eastern edge of Somerville in the old industrial zones that are planned for high density development. But it then crosses the Mystic at Assembly Square and runs from there right in front of the Encore facilities and right through close to the neighborhood where the new soccer stadium would be. With regard to that, I just want to point out again that the anticipated seat capacity would be a little more than Fenway, and the Red Sox pretty much fill all of the Green Line's capacity to deliver fans to Fenway Park. And without the Green Line, Fenway Park would really not be able to operate. It would just be too much traffic congestion. So there is a need for that capacity. One other thing, that soccer stadium will be multi-purpose. It could be used for national collegiate championships, for all sorts of other things. Could be lacrosse, could be soccer, could be women's championships as well as men. So I do think if that has legs, and Encore does have a lot of money, that they should be asked to help fund that, and that it would be worth looking into. It does get all the way to Chelsea, and it has the potential for very good connections up to Lynn as well. So if we can just backfill that a little bit to get to Longwood, you would connect the two biggest research nodes in the Northeast, if not the whole U.S., which would be Longwood Medical and Kendall Square. Kendall Square is generally considered the top research node in the world. There may be some in China that I don't know about that are bigger, but that would be unbelievably good for our economy, but also unbelievably good for pulling in the EJ communities. There are a ton of good mid-level jobs in research. Most of the research is not the high-end doctorates and the lead researchers. Most of it is in the middle. The kind of people that are trained at Bunker Hill and the other community colleges could be trained at the community college in Lynn, at the college right next to the transit there. So I'm going to stop there, but I just wanted to follow up with those observations from my neck of the world.
Oh, great. Thanks for laying that out.
Craig, anything that you would like to share or ask? Please do.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, sounds good.
Great, thank you. So of my colleagues here, I tend to be the more exasperated one in terms of where we currently stand with the system. I think my challenge right now is, unfortunately, we're still in a place where we need to solve yesterday's problems. And by that, I mean deferred maintenance, bringing staffing up to levels. I really, over my course of my years here, I love solving the problems that WIG wants to solve in terms of, gosh, like we have this center in Kendall Square, and how do we, gosh, don't we need a red-blue connector to help alleviate stress in that area? Aren't there other things we can do there? Don't we need a Grand Junction? Don't we need to do electrified rail on regional rail? I love all those ideas, and I've always been a big guy for those. But over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been so beaten down, I think, by the pathetic nature of the service that I realize we really just, I don't tend to use sports analogies in this forum, but we're kind of like the Patriots right now. That it's not one problem. We have to do everything's broken. So we need, there's no magic solution of going out. The next great quarterback isn't going to make this team better. You need to rebuild the offensive line. You need to you need improvements in the secondary. There's all kinds of things you need to do. So if I make that analogy to the MBTA, we got to fix the tracks, right? If you don't have working tracks, you're not going to have a working system. And I applaud the GM's approach to that, and I'm glad we're going to just rip the Band-Aid off next year and do that. We have to solve hiring. That's another key area. But I'm curious, and this is where I would love to get your opinion in your kind of direction. Knowing we have a number of things, just like if you were Bill Belichick or whoever the next coach is going to be doing the draft and figuring out, all right, what do I need to fix first? What do I need to fix second? What do I think need to fix third? Once we get through the tracks, assuming that's problem number one, is dealing with these tracks, what else do we need to do? What's your order of priority of items 2, 3, and 4 to kind of address in the next year, 3 years, 5 years to get this system to really back to where it was pre-pandemic in a lot of the challenges we're having?
Well, I think the reliability is key. And I think that you laid it out. The tracks have to be addressed, and the GM and I think with a lot of support from a lot of people has said we're going to take that on. But the reliability, that people know they can depend on it, and they're not waiting. I've been following the slow zone stuff. You're right. It's we could be 2 and 8 right now with all the problems coming up week to week. But that's. Those were sitting below the surface. They're all surfacing now. So those problems they're not new, but they're clearer, I guess, at this point. So I think the reliability. Do
you have a sense of what are the? I guess I'm worried about the next shoe to drop, right? That we'll fix my worry is that we spend the next year fixing the tracks, something we absolutely need to do, and then it's like, just kidding. We can't get back up. We can't get back to regular service in 2025 because we discovered the entire electrical system needs to be replaced. And then I guess I'm wondering, from your perch, do you have a sense of any other big ticket items beyond the tracks that need to be tackled before we can start thinking about these fun things like expanding service and building out the system further?
Well, it's bringing the vehicles we paid for or we're depending on to get back up. The red line cars, finishing up the orange line cars, future of the the Green Line cars. And then we were not talking about the bus, the reimagination or the transformation of the bus system, which is also a key piece of this, connecting to the other modes, the light and heavy rail. I can't tell you I know exactly what is sitting there, but obviously the tracks has been a major problem. Making the stations, and what I do like about what's going on with some of the closures, particularly on the red line, is they're not just, and I think this is important. You're not just fixing the track for today, fixing the track for years to come. And in the closures over a week or two, they're also upgrading the station so that they're making the experience a little bit better on the work they're doing. So I think it's a piece of it. I think it's the cars, it's the reliability, and as all of this kind of plays out, making sure that we as board members know what are those other issues, and letting the public know what those other issues may be that are sitting there. And it's a good question. I can't tell you that I know there's this other big problem hanging over our heads right now. But I do think that to alleviate some of the concerns is starting to get these trains running again at the regular speed, knowing that you're not waiting 15 or 20 minutes. And the track is a big piece of that. And during that work going on is identifying other electrical issues along the way. And they really have started to focus more clearly on what is the maintenance, what is the upkeep that needs to be done to make sure that we're not back to square one a year from now. And I think that's sort of the biggest challenge. On the orange line last year, all that work went on, and then the slow zones weren't eliminated. And it wasn't a clear indication at that time what the heck was going on. It can't be that way any longer. It needs to be, here's what we're dealing with. And I do think a lot of thought went into at least addressing the tracks here. And I think it's a key piece right now to getting the system back up and running, building some of the trust back. The Green Line extension, you made a good point there. Excellent opportunity over there. I think the frustration from our perspective, the riders and others, is the tracks not being set down. The wrong gauge being put down. Those things can't happen any longer. So we need to prove that we can take step by step and make the system work the way people want it to work. And I really think that, and I saw it on the Blue Line. I was riding it before it was really even publicized. The slowdowns were starting to happen, and I was like, what's going on? Word came out that the slow zones, and the reason that all of the lines have slow zones, and that the tracks have not been upgraded or maintained the way they need to be maintained. Now, riding on the Blue Line last week, I'm feeling like it's getting back to where I can depend on it as a rider. That to me is what we have to do. And we are starting to take that on, and we have to be honest. And then if there are other things as we dive deeper into, as the work goes on, then we have to be clear on what they are and how we're going to take those on. But I think that's the biggest challenge: building the trust back, getting people willing to get back on the train, take it, and start to see that we're in a better place than we were 2 months ago. By the end of 2024, we're going to be back to where we needed to be pre-slowdown. It's a great question. And I think that's the frustration of where we're at. The system is not working the way we want it to work. And we need to take on the challenges that have been left on the sidelines for a while and take them head on and be honest and open about it to the riding public. So if I think initially on the orange line, and I'll just speak for myself, I wasn't on the board at that point, but it took a few weeks. They were slow to begin with once it reopened. It took a few weeks to really identify why that was happening. You need to be upfront right away and let people know, okay, this is what we thought was, particularly, we're going to probably run into, they anticipate over 2024 and that scheduling, there's going to be things that don't work particularly exactly the way that people want it to work. But it's saying today, if we run into a problem that we found today while we're working on the tracks, that everybody knows what that problem is immediately, and that we're working to fix it based on what we know today. And that's important. So I may not have answered your question directly, but
no,
it's a really good point.
I really appreciate your perspective, or your reaffirmation of this idea of being transparent about the issues. I think we're at I don't think that was always the way. I think, going back a decade or so, that I think there was just culturally it wasn't there. And sometimes you kind of have to hit rock bottom to kind of acknowledge that and just be open with things. But it seems between the board and with the new GM, there seems to be a commitment to transparency, and I hope that continues. So, as an example, if we get bad news out of Springfield again because there's yet another delay, I hope that isn't sugarcoated. I hope the spirit of transparency and openness continues, because I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everything you and the board are doing in that front, and I think it's the right way to go.
No, people need to know what the truth is, and deal with it. If the blue line is going to be 40 minutes slower for the next 5 weeks, people need to know. If I'm going to a doctor's appointment and they say the only way I'm going to get there is on the blue line, then at least I know I can go 40 minutes earlier and get on a train. It can't be, well, maybe you'll get there, maybe you won't. And I think that's changed. And the GM talks about it at every meeting on the culture, not only the culture of the agency, but the culture of the workforce. And he says it almost at every meeting, that the employees, be upfront with what you see as problems. We're all in this together. We're working together. And if you see something, you let us know. We need to know together. And so that it's not keep it quiet, or, we don't want to talk about that today. It's like, here's a problem. We know what the problem is, and let's take it on. Even if we can't fix it today, hopefully we can fix it tomorrow. And I think for the riders to know that we're being frank and honest about where we're at also allows us to take on what we need to do to fix it. Because I think if you're riding on a train, and I think this is important to think about. If you're riding on a train and there's always something happens, or there's a terrible tragedy ahead, and you're sitting on the train for 40 minutes, I think it's important to let the riders know this isn't just a typical delay. There's something that's caused this delay, and here's what's happened. And I think people may not be happy, but they will understand if you're honest and open with them. If you're not honest about it, it builds a lack of trust. It builds that lack of trust. And I feel strongly about it. People need to know the system is challenged and struggling. But if you're honest with people about it, people at least are willing to understand that you're letting them know the reality of the situation day to day. So I feel strongly about that. And I think that has changed. And then that we are, as an agency, being honest and open about what we can do today and what we're going to be able to do tomorrow. And that's why I think this plan that the GM put out last week, it's a whole long, well thought out plan with different shutdowns at different times. So people are going to know months in advance what they need to do. If for 2 weeks, the red line is going to be shut down in a certain section, there's plenty of time to plan for it. And then the system will work better when that work is done.
I think I want to call out what I'm seeing as a common thread between all of these. And, it even goes back to what Len was saying originally about asking the right questions. I think the openness and the transparency at the agency level, all the way from staffers up to managers, directors, the GM, the openness and transparency of the board, of the legislature being open and transparent about the battles of funding and costs. It all ties into needing to ask the right questions. And I guess it's one part of comment. Like I feel now like in the last year or so, we really have the right questions being asked. I mean, it took the FTA involvement. It took the light being shown on the on the DPU and issues there for a lot of these questions to be asked. But the thread that ties us and our organization in as well is, again, it's wanting to make sure the right questions are being asked. I mean, I have complete faith that the openness and transparency is going to get the answers out to the people who want to hear those answers. But I feel like there's still opportunity for the questions to be asked. As Len was saying, you know, Len tries to read. We all try to read as much material and dig in as deeply as we can, just in the off chance that we might pick up on something. People in our organization might pick up on something that, oh, maybe the board didn't think about this. Maybe the managers didn't think about this. But there's sort of a disconnect sometimes between the different groups and wanting to get those questions asked and answered. I guess maybe I'll just ask this one simple question. Do you, Mr. McGee, feel like right now we've got a good balance of the communication channels between the board, the agency, advocacy groups, you know, like T Riders Union, like T for Mass, our organization, the agency?
I think it's building. I think it's, you ask a great question. I might not have the right question, or may not know the right way to ask the question. You may know that, you may have that right question answered. So I think like I said earlier, it's collaborating together to ask the right questions, to focus on the right issues, and to allow those discussions to continue. So it's a work in progress, and I think it's moving, in a really good direction. So it does mean, like, the riders, as a rider oversight committee, if you have ideas or thoughts, bring those forward. Working with T for Mass, working with Transit Matters.
Right.
Those questions are getting asked, and and I think there's been positive feedback on some of the things that are being done related to those questions that I didn't see happening in the past. So, but it really isn't going to involve all of us trying to ask the right questions, move together in the right direction, and find solutions together, and talk about what works. I use it a little bit too much sometimes, but like the good, the bad, and the ugly. What's really bad about what's going on, and we need to know that. But we also have to talk about some of the good things happening, and there are good things. I said this, and Stefan, again, and Lynn, the Lynn station's been closed. It was closed abruptly last year, and it was going to be closed for almost 2 years. Well, the GM, working with his team, came up with a plan after he came to Lynn to open that station 9 months early. Got announced yesterday morning. The governor was in Lynn that the station will be opening December 18th, 9 months ahead of schedule. That's a good story. That's a good story about what's going on. And I said it when we did the ribbon cutting, or we did the groundbreak. It was getting ready about 3 weeks ago. There was a Commercial Street in Lynn. There's a commuter rail bridge that goes right over Commercial Street. That bridge was in terrible shape. They replaced the bridge over the weekend. 2 day. It's a brand new bridge is now on the commuter rail. It was a 2 day. All the prep work that went on, similar to the Fast 14. You do all of the work, and then you can do over a weekend. You come in. The T replaced that bridge with, there's all kinds of other construction work going on locally on that same street. That's a real main way in and out of the city off of the Lynn Way. So there are good things going on, and there are not so good things going on. So we need to own them all, and then we need to find ways of asking the right questions, working together to make sure we are going in the right direction. And if there's things we are missing out on, then it's important that we hear in a positive way how we can, learn about that and make the appropriate actions or take on those appropriate challenges in a way that we need to. And so it's a good point, Stefan. And like I said from the beginning, it's going to take all of us together, supporting the efforts, making sure that we are doing the right thing and moving on, taking on the challenges together.
Yep. Thank you. I just noticed that we just turned over to 6 o'clock. So in order to let you get out and get back to your family this evening, Mr. McGee, how about, gents, how about we try to wrap up the time with Mr. McGee in about another 5 minutes or less, so we can let him get on to his family?
Good question. Hopefully, and I'm open to ongoing, I'm here tonight, but I'm open to ongoing interaction, discussion, comments, questions, thoughts.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ideas of what we can do better. That's the role, I think. And so hopefully this is a good discussion. I'm encouraged by the direction we're going. I'm encouraged about the opportunities, and obviously recognize the frustration of where we are today and where we've been, but hopefully we're in a better place moving forward. So I'm happy to be part of this discussion. That's why I'm willing to be part of the board, and I want to. We all want it to work. The employees at the T want it to work. The management wants it to work. We need to find a way to make it happen.
Absolutely. Wig, it looks like you want to say final part?
With apologies, I forgot one key fact. This will be very brief. The environmental documents on the urban ring proposal were done about 15 years ago. And the key fact in my mind was that phase 3 represented 300,000 new rapid transit trips on the main line, but it also created 150,000 new transit trips on red, green, orange, and blue because of the trips pulled onto the urban ring. So the total capacity addition was 450,000 trips per day on high-speed rapid transit from that project, which is a very large proportion of the trips per day today. So I just didn't, I forgot to throw in that key fact. I apologize for not doing that earlier.
No, I appreciate that. I'd like to get a look at that. I'm sure I've seen it in the past. Similar to the Gateway City report that related to all the commuter rail stops along the gateway cities. Yep. Similar kind of ridership increases, thousands and thousands of rides. If we do what we need to do. So it's like I said, the potential's there. Let's tap into that potential.
Yeah, I'll get that to you, perhaps through Stefan.
That'd be
I'll
great.
get it to you in the next week. Thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah. That'd be great. Look forward to it. Thank you.
I'll follow up.
Craig, anything else?
No, it's 6 o'clock. I mean, so and he's offering to talk with us some more. So I will be in touch, Mr. McGee.
Great. Yeah, like I said, this isn't a one-off. I'm happy to be engaged. Want to make the riders experience what it should be.
Thank you, Craig. Look, I want to make sure that you get a chance to say what's on your mind, Craig, because it looks like you're itching to say it.
I was going to bring up another topic, and I don't know if we have time. I guess I would say, just curious if you have any thoughts about where to go with the seaport. The Silver Line was kind of a last minute. You know this better than anybody. The Silver Line was a last minute addition to the plan. Curious decision to build grand stations underground for bus platoons that never materialized. That area is just continuing to go gangbusters. You're seeing additional growth. You're going to see nothing but growth along A Street as the Gillette parcel is sold, and in some of those projects with air rights over the what is essentially the Big Dig get built out. Another one of those key economic driver areas where we can, we can build all the regional rail we want going into South Station and tear down the post office and build all the train stations we want there. But then if people can't get out to where the jobs are in the seaport in South Boston, the last leg isn't done. So I'm just curious if you've heard anything, or if that, once again, this is a decade out project, but how do we move beyond the Silver Line in that area?
It's a great question. I haven't heard any discussion on it. I mean, it's another piece of the puzzle, another thing on the plate. But it's as we're talking, I was in Houston. Was it last week? Well, in the last couple of weeks, I was in Houston with the Bar Foundation on a climate resiliency transportation trip, and talk about a car-centric community with major highways and more 10-lane highways being built that the legislature wants through Houston. So, but in that climate, they have a light rail system that they've really put together over the last since 2004. They actually took I don't know if you've been to Houston, but they took Main Street, which runs through, and it was not really an activated Main Street, and they've run a light rail line right through the center of Houston that goes all the way out to the football stadium and runs from the baseball stadium and runs right through. So it was interesting that they took that one lane each way. I'm not suggesting that's what we're going to do in the seaport, but I think we need to think a little bit outside the box about what we can do to get people quickly around that district. And your point's well taken. That's becoming more and more. It really is a neighborhood now. So I don't know what the answer is, but it is another piece of the puzzle. I do think that what has been positive and will continue to grow, and I didn't really talk about this, but water transportation is an untapped, unlimited opportunity from really the whole, Quincy, Columbia Point, Winthrop, Lynn, Salem, Hingham, Hull. There's opportunity, and in the harbor right across from the Seaport District. We can get from Lynn to the Seaport District in 30 minutes. So there's that's an easy or easier kind of proposal. You don't have any infrastructure except the pier and the boats. Right. So that's one of my. I'm a big ferry guy. So there is potential to take some of that pressure off over there if there really is, and it's starting to happen anyway. I think with some of the water taxi options on the harbor, but it doesn't address your underlying question about on the streets. And as that continues to expand out, what's the way to get around that easily? And it's going to be fodder for discussion moving forward. It's a good question.
We really
Thank you
should
again.
let it go.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. McGee. Thank you so very much for joining us. What a pleasure to have you. And yes, we will keep in touch and we'll work more together. Yes. Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. Look forward to working together. Thanks.
Take care.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thanks.
Hey, Craig, the Silver Line tunnels are bigger than Red Line tunnels. And the original plan was a Red Line diversion. And it was sacrificed as the Big Dig roadway overspending took over. And that's how it became the Silver Line. But there's enough capacity under there to do a diversion and then to end up at Broadway Station on Red Line from South Station.
I like it. I'll take it. To me, it's still that once again that idea of solving yesterday's problems.
Yep.
We put together a grand plan for a giant new neighborhood, a once in a generational expansion of neighborhoods, and we're like, underground bus.
Right.
Yep. It just didn't. It's like, whoa, time. And you are all closer to legislation than I am on this, but it's like you would think we would have something in the legislature to say that if you're going to add a certain level, if you're going to allow for a certain level of a transit plan that matches that level of density. And I, to my knowledge, I don't know anything like I'm adding this much capacity. I have to add this many bathrooms, or I have to add this much. It's not unprecedented to set something like this. So I guess I'm twofold here. I'm taking this conversation two ways. One, is there anything we can do here to prevent this happening in other neighborhoods? I'm thinking the Alston redevelopment. I'm thinking of if anything ever happens to Wooded Circle. I'm thinking of the building the soccer stadium. Like how do you force more transit into some of these scenarios? And then also back to my original question, you know, what's the true solution for the seaport?
I think I know the answer to the first question, which unfortunately would come down to legislative mandates. In other words, laws being passed that would require a certain amount of public transit per capita for developments, and I mean, and rapid transit or light rail. I can't imagine that we would ever see legislative requirements like that, though.
Here's one that we've done distance-based pricing on trains. I don't think I've seen like distance-based pricing on buses. But I'll tell you, I think like a lot of the seaport area is very walkable. From South Station. And now, understandably, if people are elderly, or they're injured, they can't walk. And when the weather's really bad, there's a disincentive to walking. But I think there's like the habit of taking transit versus like needing to take transit because of unusual circumstances. So it's like, but there's like the distal parts of the seaport area that aren't that easily walkable, from South Station. So if you did distance-based bus pricing, it's like the further you want to go,
but pricing isn't solving the problem, right?
Well, maybe I'm just one more thing. If it's really dense, though, it's like if you have 100,000 people per mile, how much transit do you need? It's like it becomes very walkable, right?
Right. We should only build commuter rail then.
Well, it becomes walkable as long as
we don't need any subways, any buses. We're just gonna you just build commuter rails because that's where you need people to get point A to point B. I mean, if you want to play the
I'm asking you, Craig. At what point, though? Does it become impractical or not even something you think about? Putting a train there because there are just so many people. Like if you have your 10-minute neighborhood, are you going to put a lot of transit in that 10-minute neighborhood that maybe have 100,000 people in it? Yes,
you are, because you want to. The reality is people want to go to other areas of the city, right? So you need to incentivize the people who are living in those new areas of the city to not buy a car and add to the congestion in those areas. You need to incentivize those individuals to because that's what happens, right? The alternative, what if you don't build the stations there and you say, hey, suck it up and walk, the guy who's paying $4,000 a month for a 1-bedroom in the seaport, like, fine, I'll just buy a $500 parking pass. I don't care. Money's not my problem.
Sorry, go ahead. I keep interrupting.
And same things like I've always like if we want to get more cars up the street, people taking the commute. People go to the giant convention center, right? The number of Ubers that probably drop off there from all the hotels. If there was an actual light rail that went up Summer Street, and it just was right there, shining, gleaming in front of you, you would take that instead, right? Like I'm not saying there are other problems we need to solve, but I think there's just a missed opportunity here to keep loading this neighborhood with stuff and then not build the corresponding transit that we've turned the seaport into Houston, right? And now we have to retrofit it where we could have done it right, but we were building from the ground up.
I guess it's a matter of capacity, but I'm really getting at, Greg, is like how much capacity do you build? Because if you're building the capacity to get people out when they want to go out, but they're doing most of the stuff that they want to do in the area, then that's a whole different level of capacity versus like we don't want you're going to take transit like everywhere in this very dense area because then you'd like need a really dense bus network. And I would argue, it might be that your roads become clogged with buses, because people are taking buses versus walking, versus taking.
No, that's why I don't want buses. That's right. The seaport's not a self-contained neighborhood of everybody's going to live there and shop at the grocery store there and live there. More people from the outside go to the neighborhood. It's a combination of work. It's a combination of entertainment venues. It's a combination of restaurants. What I want is I want the 24-year-old living in Dorchester to not take the Uber from Dorchester into the restaurant in the Seaport because he's annoyed on a cold winter night that he's got to get out at the red line and walk across the windy channel 20 miles because Len thinks he should suck it up. I want it to be a normal functioning network that any other neighborhood in a normal city where you can do a link from A to B. If I want to go to the restaurant over here, I take one subway line this way and I get on the other subway line this way, and look, I'm there. I'm not buying then the T. Don't worry, it's broken. Suck it up and walk. Like campaign. Like that. It's not the.
You're not even paraphrasing. I'm not even. Well, anyways, whatever. So I don't know, Greg. I don't know how to respond to that.
No, but I am making Wig laugh, and that was really my main goal here.
That's good. But anyways, one thing I was gonna say to Tom McGee, well, two things. One was that my concern, is that we're putting a lot of effort into slow zones, and it's not clear to me that the cause of them is a real safety issue based on that report that I read that said, essentially the FTA use metrics that are more applicable, to a different kind of system. And so it's not clear to me that we actually need to slow things down as much as we are, because it's not clear to me the system is unsafe. Now let's go ahead and do the level of repair that the FTA is requiring. If the standards though is too rigorous, I'm wondering how much we're going to spend to maintain that standard, and if we aren't better off making our case that this is the wrong standard, and we need to find the right standard so that we are applying our resources properly. And so I kind of wanted to delve in that's some more, but I thought that was maybe a little bit too much in the weeds. But the other thing is, like, in terms of like what should we keep an eye out on? I think we should keep an eye out on crime, on the T, and just be really vigilant about that, and take whatever measures we need if we see it beginning to increase at all. Do what we need to get that down, and maybe put some resources into helping people who are on the T because there's no place to go, so that's my concern there.
Len, I do agree with you on that. I think if I was disappointed at all in Tom's comments in his kind of answer to my question, was beyond the tracks and in the trains, that there wasn't like I think, knowing he's living and breathing this every day a lot more than we do, I would have expected a little bit more of a rapid fire of, now everybody knows about this, but in my because I'm reading all the board decks, I'm into the board decks. I also think we need, we're underfunded in station maintenance, and I've advocated for a team, replacement of 20 escalators hasn't happened, and I think another big problem we have in terms of getting a functioning system is XYZ, and he didn't really expand beyond the kind of like the fix the tracks and get the trains.
Right. Yeah, there's a certain amount of spoon feeding that happens when you're at the level that he's at, and I can say that because I can identify with being on that level, on the MPO board. It's like now I don't know to what extent the chair and the co-chair of the MPO board are actively managing that agenda, meaning that they are telling staff that I want you to go out and look at this and bring this to the rest of the board. That's not my sense of what's going on from having been there a number of years and seeing cyclically what's happening. And so there's not much like, let's go looking for problems. And essentially what I was trying to get him to think about doing is like, go looking for problems, And that's why I think a board of 7, 9 people just isn't enough to go looking for problems. In fact, as I said, there were early discussions about how to create this board, I was thinking it needs to be really big. But yes, that becomes unmanageable. But then like each board member would have like a staff, maybe 4 or 5 people. Each member would be responsible for a certain area. And they have like 3 subcommittees now. One on finance, one on workers, and one on safety. I may not be completely right about the other 2 committees.
That's right.
And so that's a start. But I think there's like a lot more to the T, and so they really need to go looking for problems. And have the people that can help them do the problems, and they need to hire the people to do this, because right now I think staff is already overworked, and it's not something that they can do right away. It'll take them a while to build it out, but then they'll have the capacity to really do the investigation that you need to really stay on top of things. Anyways.
Before I forget, just a quick I hate to jump back, but regarding the slow zones, I do believe that they all were implemented in response to safety concerns. But I think if we were to look under the hood, I'm expecting, or I would not be surprised, I'll say that, if the degree to which the slow zones are continuing is actually also not entirely, not primarily, but also related to long-term wear and tear on the rolling stock and the right-of-way infrastructure itself. Case in point was GLX. When it first came out, the tracks are gauged too tightly. There was an immediate slowdown to like 3 miles an hour, but then the investigation went through, and I think it was within a week or 2, speeds were back up to normal, even before the gauge had been fixed. That's not happening for a while. But what I heard coming out of that was, and I think we heard it from in the subcommittee, that's not primarily a safety issue. The GLX rail's too tight, but it's a wear and tear on the rails and the wheels issue that means it needs to get fixed. So I'm not suggesting, like I said, I'm not suggesting that the slow zones are entirely now because of trying to divert wear and tear or prevent wear and tear. But I think there's an element there that's either not being publicized, particularly when we are trying to get the CRRC cars en masse. And I'm thinking of at least one, I think it might have been 2 track problems were pointed as the issue why we had problems on the Orange Line with the new CRRC cars. Like there was one derailment I remember was, that was a track switch problem that with the new car is something. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah,
I think I made the point.
Well, just to repeat though, I forget the report. I think I'll have to go to and find it again, but it just said that the FTA did the measurements with different standards, that weren't really applicable, to the T,
right.
And so the standards are just more stringent than would apply to the T. And that was one of the reasons that the people who saw the results just kind of like dismissed them. It's like, these are too rigorous for what the T requires, and then it's because they were tossed out, I think the problem is that other things have happened. We've had like these accidents in rail yards, and other things that indicate like a culture, that isn't as safety, oriented as it should be. But then so the FTA comes in, and then they do this rigorous review, and then part of that, kind of involved in this measurement of the tracks that was using a different system, and so now the T tracks are being held to a much higher standard, than I think is necessary, and it's a hard argument to make. Beyond that, you're being more safe than necessary, but but there is a point where there is a point where that happens, and it is a different system than the passenger rail system that I think that they were using as the basis for determining whether there are issues. Like I said, I need to go and get the report again, but so that's why I say
No,
I think it's not the safety issue we think it is.
So if I could just jump in, just where I travel, the orange line over the Mystic, where they had the train catch on fire and the girl jumped in the river and all that, that has been extraordinarily slow. I mean, that has been just a crawl speed. Also from Science Park to Chinatown, on the main line, green and orange, that has also been extraordinarily slow. You can walk much faster than that. In both of those places, you can walk much faster, like 5 times faster than those trains have been going over the last year. The stuff in Somerville is completely more like Len has just described. I really haven't been slowed down on the Long Branch. Not that it's noticeable. I go almost from Leechmere to Tufts, which is pretty much the whole thing. It hasn't felt slow, and it's been fully utilized. I see Gilman Station at rush hour; it's full. People are using it. They're really taking it and enjoying it. I think there's just a big gap between what gets reported in the press and what's true sometimes and what's not really observationally true other times.
I want to say something else, but I think Craig wants to get in here. Craig?
No, Len, I was going to agree with you that it's. I like to make analogies I like to make analogies in general, but I do. I like to make analogies to other businesses because I think sometimes we tend to treat the MBTA as this kind of mythical kind of special creature, and it's the challenge we're having with the rails is no different than any other heavily regulated industry, right? So whether you're in the pharmaceutical industry and you have regulators, or you're in the financial industry and you have regulators, when a regulator notices a problem, they go in all in on it, and they're going to make you make darn sure that you've remediated it. The key is finding that right level of remediation, right? It's how do you do the level of remediation that truly solves the problem and passes the test without gold plating the solution that you've oversolved to do it. This isn't sometimes things can be viewed through a prism of trying to make the regulator happy, and that then it becomes a race to getting an A in the paper. And this isn't about getting an A in the paper. This is about doing what is needed to make it a safe and useful system. The regulator just happens to be the way of kind of identifying that there's something that needs to be remediated.
Or the cure can't be worse than the disease, right? Yeah, so a little different thing. This is a little humorous. So it seems like the flow zones are decreasing on my ride home from Kendall. I'm sorry, from MGH to Alewife. So last night we're zipping along, and I'm kind of happy, and then we get to be just outside Alewife, and we sit there, and we sit there. And we sit there and we sit there and we sit there because they're waiting to, both platforms are full. And so I think I lost all the time from the speed up, just waiting, for, and that's always been a problem, but I don't know if it's worse. I mean, in fact, it's funny because it was still a problem when there were the slow zones, and I think it's just to have these big gaps in service. And it's like one like 18 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes between trains. So it's like,
and I have had to take not had to, but I have had to either drive or take the red line to Quincy for some meetings because I sit on the Massport Oversight Committee, and there are some slow lines on the red line. From Davis to Quincy, I mean, it's much better than driving. You know, I can take some reading. It's a little crowded in places, but in other places it's not crowded. It's a much more pleasant way to go, notwithstanding some slow zones on the red line. So
Yeah, I was just, I don't know. I wish we could solve the platform issue at Alewife because it is just kind of frustrating. You're there, and you don't really have a sense of how long you're going to be there. And you can tell that the driver, the train operator, he was very apologetic, very nice, and you could just tell that he was even exasperated after like, I think it was easily 5 minutes, So I've been thinking today myself, like, how do you solve that problem? Without building like more stuff down there. I don't even know if we can build more stuff down there. So it's that, well, I don't have anything really to report in terms of new decks or anything. There hasn't been much since our last meeting.
I've got to run.
Okay.
But thank you guys for a really, really good meeting. I
Sure.
really appreciate everybody's participation and Stefan for setting it up.
Yeah. We may do a like executive committee meeting maybe right after this or sometime before the meeting in December, because I think the plan now is just to have one meeting in December, the second Tuesday in December.
I'm happy to motion with Wig leaving. I'm happy to motion to close if you and Stefan want to move to executive session to talk about any other
okay.
details.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's fine. All right.
So
Okay.
I'll motion to end the meeting. I don't know if there's any public comments.
I will check right now. Nothing on YouTube, and we have no other folks in the Zoom. So yeah, I'll second. We will. We're not ending the meeting, but we're going to switch to executive session. So I will stop the YouTube stream. Thank you for watching, folks.